You're watching Wild About Arizona, the official podcast of the Arizona Game and Fish Department. Here's your host, Michael Coliani.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. So Arizona is full of wide open spaces, dense forests, alpine lakes, and beautiful rivers. This means it's also home to a variety of large mammals, including black bears. To discuss the role that black bears play in our environment and what you need to know about these majestic creatures while you enjoy yourself out in the wild, we are joined today by April Howard, a large carnivore biologist with the Arizona Game and Fish Department. Thanks for joining us today, April.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, our pleasure. So, April, first off, could you just tell us a little bit about your role within the Arizona Game and Fish Department and what got you involved?
Well, I have been with the department for about 10 years now, and I am the predator, furbearer, and large carnivore biologist. So I oversee the management of those species across the entire state. And that includes things like making recommendations for sustainable harvest, collecting and analyzing data, population modeling and monitoring, and identifying information needs.
So those are, and those animals are kind of the big popular ones that we love to see in photos and people love to go out and see in the wild, things like that. Pretty cool research you're involved in. So obviously today we're talking a little bit more specifically about black bears. And so if you could tell us a little bit of history about black bears within the state of Arizona and just where our research has come and brought us to today.
So black bears in Arizona are found in the higher elevation parts of the state. Mostly in woodland and forested habitats. So in the early part of the 20th century, unrestricted harvest likely led to suppressed black bear populations. But in 1968, we reclassified big bears as a big game species, and that allowed us to better regulate harvest. So that, along with a more conservative approach to harvest management, likely led to increased black bear abundance. So over the past decade, we've started to see black bears in areas where we previously considered less suitable for bears. And so for us, that suggests that we likely have a growing and expanding bear population in Arizona. And that's pretty consistent with what bear managers are seeing across the West.
That's pretty exciting to know that, the research and the efforts that we've been making are obviously having a pretty substantial impact on their population. Mm-hmm. So this is something we were discussing a little bit off camera before, April. In the spring, the two of us were actually able to attend a conference that focused on black bears up in Wyoming. So what did you learn specifically at this conference, and what have you brought back to Arizona?
So I think the most notable take home for me is that most states and provinces are dealing with the same issues when it comes to black bear management or bear management in general. So one, estimating and monitoring abundance, and two, mitigating human-bear conflicts. So bears are solitary, secretive creatures, and they prefer dense cover. And so being able to directly observe them and monitor them is not an easy, straightforward task. And so learning about the different techniques that are being used across North America to monitor black bear abundance is definitely helpful, especially as we continue to refine our own monitoring methods. And then also just learning what tools have been successful for others in dealing with those human-bear conflicts. And so along with the WAFWA-sponsored Black Bear Workshop, we also have a Bear Managers Forum that we can tap into to ask questions of other bear managers. And so we were recently able to use that group to help identify some measures to mitigate some human-bear conflicts in Arizona, in an area of the state where those conflicts were increasing.
Yeah, it was really a pretty fascinating conference and learning about, some of those different techniques that other states use, whether it be electrified mats or things like that to kind of dissuade bears from being around homes. I know that we both particularly enjoyed the bear spray training that involved a robotic bear charging some of the folks and finding the different ways that people kind of utilize that bear spray to get it in the bear's face. It was pretty interesting. Speaking of those human-wildlife conflicts, right, that seem to be increasing as those populations increase, they obviously make the headlines sometimes, right? We had a fatal attack in Prescott last year. There was a bear attack here in the state of Arizona in Alpine earlier this summer. So just if you could, what are your impressions of these attacks, and are there any similarities or facts that we consistently see when it comes to black bear attacks?
Well, I think that if you live or recreate in bear country, there's always going to be a chance, although a small chance, of having an encounter with a bear. I think it's always important to understand that, like most wildlife, bears can be dangerous and unpredictable. And we do see some similarities in fatal black bear attacks. So most fatal black bear attacks occur on parties of one or two individuals, and most are predatory in nature, meaning that the bear was not reacting defensively in an effort to maybe protect its cubs or a kill that it had made. So that's typically behavior that managers see from grizzly bears, which we don't have here in Arizona. In male black bears, typically adults, are the ones that are most often involved in those fatal predatory attacks. In Arizona, all of the black bears that have been caught after they've been involved in an attack have been male bears.
For the most part, conventional wisdom would tell people, whenever I tell people about the bear attacks that I'm involved with on the public affairs side, people always seem to assume, I bet it was a mother bear, protecting some cubs. But that's really not what we see at all.
No, not with black bears. It's very rare. Grizzly bears, yes, definitely, but not black bears. It's almost always adult males.
So speaking of being out in wild and recreating and enjoying Arizona's great outdoors, what are some tips that you usually like to give folks who are going to be out camping, recreating, to kind of keep bears away from their campsites?
Well, I think most importantly is to keep a clean campsite, not bringing food and trash into your tent or around your tent, cooking away from your tent and not sleeping in clothes that you cooked in, not bringing anything into the tent that smells. So drinks, lotions, deodorants. Black bears have an amazing sense of smell, and they are probably more likely to investigate those smells when they're trying to put on weight for denning. And the same goes for people that live in bear country. Keep your yards free of trash or pet food. If you have bird feeders out and you have bears visiting them at night, bring those bird feeders in. Putting your trash out for pickup the morning of rather than the night before. And if you're hiking in bear country, we always recommend that people hike in groups, because most of those fatal attacks have occurred on one or two individuals. Carry bear spray and know how to use it. Like you mentioned, our training there at the Black Bear Workshop, a lot of folks, carry bear spray around with them, but have never used it. So it's important to be able to know what to do in that situation if it ever occurs. And if you do encounter a bear, back away slowly while facing the animal to give it room to escape the area. And if it doesn't leave the area, yell, make yourself look bigger. Never a good idea to turn your back on the animal or to run away. And most importantly, if you are attacked, always fight back. Mm-hmm. It's a much higher chance of surviving if you do fight back.
And yes, like you said, always carry that bear spray, but make sure that it's not expired, right? Because that's a problem as well.
Yeah, something that we learned at the workshop that I think a lot of people never think about. So if you have expired bear spray, you definitely want to, buy a newer canister. When you do spray an expired can of bear spray, it basically just fizzles out. Mm-hmm. And so the last thing you want is to be in a situation where you need the bear spray, and it just it doesn't do anything to prevent the bear from coming towards you. So.
It's just like a fire extinguisher, right? It's going to expire, mm-hmm. So make sure to check those labels and make sure that you have up-to-date bear spray and ready to go if you're going to be mm-hmm. outside recreating like that. Great. So where do you think that the future of black bear research here in the state of Arizona is going to go? What does it look like? And what are you and your team hoping to learn as we move forward?
Well, we learned a lot about black bears through our research projects in the 1980s, but it's tough to say if what we learned then about survival, reproduction, and density still applies to the bear population today, 40 years later. And so our research branch is going to be conducting a study on black bear demographics, ecology, and space use. And so we will be collecting valuable data on survival and recruitment rates, and those data will inform a population model to estimate statewide abundance, and that will allow us to monitor those annual trends in abundance every year.
So that's pretty exciting to know that we haven't really been able to do much research for a couple decades now, and to really be able to bring that back, does it just mean a lot to you and you personally as well, just having such a passion for these animals? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that, it's great to stay up to date on the most, advanced methods to monitor black bears or any species. And so it's great that we're taking these steps to just continue to inform our management and have the most robust data set that we can, and using the most advanced science to inform our management of this species and other species.
Yeah, April, I'm just thinking, obviously a lot of those research techniques have probably improved greatly since the 80s or 90s. And could you go into a little bit of detail about what, some of that newer technology that we use to do this research?
Certainly. Well, I think the collars themselves have certainly advanced since the 80s. In the past, biologists used to have to go out there pretty much every day with a telemetry antenna or conduct a flight, every week to monitor these animals. And now with GPS technology on a lot of these collars, we can pretty much just pull up our phone and log into our app, and we can see where our collared animals are on the landscape. A lot of these collars are so advanced that, they can send us a notification when an animal has died. They can actually take the temperatures of the animal. They can record how quickly an animal is moving. So there's definitely just huge advancements in the world of collars themselves that allow us to just better monitor our animals, our species.
Wow. The saying, there's an app for that. There's even an app to help you track black bears.
Certainly is.
Very, very interesting. So, April, if you could, is there anything else that you feel like we need to cover when it comes to black bears, their behavior, and the research you're conducting?
Yeah, I did just kind of want to revisit the predatory behavior that black bears sometimes may exhibit, and just explain that we don't really have a good explanation for why any animal might exhibit predatory behavior towards a human. In the case with many fatal black bear attacks, food or garbage has been present, and so that certainly could attract a bear to the area and contribute to the attack. Across North America, we tend to see more numerous attacks at the end of summer, which is also the time when bears are trying to bulk up in preparation for denning. And so it is possible, although probably rare, that a bear would perceive a human as a high energy prey. And then in some cases, some bears that have been involved in fatal attacks have had health problems. And so it seems logical that a sick bear or an injured bear that might be food stressed would be more likely to take those risks that would be associated with a predation attempt. But most bears that have been involved in a fatal attack have been thought to be healthy. So again, we don't really have a really good explanation for why a bear would exhibit predatory behavior towards a human.
Yeah, it sounds like there's still a lot of groundbreaking research to be done, and that's why it's so exciting to be involved in this type of thing, I'm sure.
I agree. Yeah.
Well, April, thank you so much for joining us today. And of course, you can find more information about bears and other species throughout the state of Arizona on our website, azgfd.gov. Thanks again, April.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Visit us online at www.azgfd.gov.